Security teams need network data to threat hunt and resolve incidents, but find that PCAP is often too much data and NetFlow isn't enough. Corelight was founded by the creators of Zeek, formerly Bro, and its sensors provide just the right amount of data, transforming raw traffic into comprehensive logs, extracted files, and custom insights so analysts can make fast sense of traffic and move the speed of attack. To find out why Corelight is your best next move in security, visit securityweekly.com/Corelight. Signal Sciences secures the most important web applications, APIs, and microservices of the world's leading companies. Protecting over 7,500 applications and 150 billion production requests per week, Signal Sciences Next-Gen WAF and RASP help companies increase security and maintain site reliability without sacrificing velocity, all at the lowest total cost of ownership. Signal Sciences' patented technology protects any application against any attack, with integrations into any DevOps toolchain. Signal Sciences, demand more from your WAF. Learn more at signalsciences.com/PSW. The greatest threat to businesses today isn't the outsider trying to get in. It's the people you trust, the ones who already have the keys, your employees, contractors, and privileged users. 60% of online attacks are carried out by insiders. To stop these insider threats, you need to see what users are doing before an incident occurs. Observit enables security teams to detect risky user activity, investigate incidents in minutes, and effectively respond. Get your free trial at observit.com/securityweekly. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. We're talking about evaluating security vendors. I do have an announcement. My teleprompter is not working. But some of you have told us you're overwhelmed by the amount of content we distribute. To get on our listener interest list, you can go to securityweekly.com/subscribe. Not only subscribe to all of our shows, but also join a list that will eventually give you access to a system where you will receive notifications about content that we publish that is within your interests. So, and now today we're much closer to that because we released a new version of our software, and we'll be releasing a new updated version of our website. The first one, completely free to everyone, will let you sort and filter by categories and tags and topics and shows, so you can find things you're interested in. And then after that, we'll build another website where you register, tell us a little bit about what you're interested in, and receive notifications. How about that?
Can't awesome. Wait.
I think that was it for that announcement. Yep. So we're talking about security vendors. We have a lot to say about security vendors on this show, Matt.
We do. And look, we're a week away from Black Hat. And I thought, what a better way than give some people some tips and pointers when they go to Black Hat, because they're going to see hundreds of vendors on the floor. You're going to see a lot of the same messages out there. You're going to see a lot of the same terms out there. So how do you kind of cut through the noise and really start to think about, how do I evaluate what's this vendor doing? Should I continue to talk to them? Are they somebody I should worry about or not worry about? I thought it would be good for us to kind of do this. You and Adrian did a webcast on this, I think a couple weeks ago. Yep. So anybody can go back and look at that webcast as well if they want to. But I thought it would be good for us to give some tips and tricks before people head to Vegas next week.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing that I typically start with is, if you're going to walk the floor, is to have a plan and a goal, right? Because honestly, I think most people just kind of wander around, and you're going to get lost, and you're going to get caught up in the hype, and you're going to see cool things, and you'll be like, ooh, coffee, and ooh, like I can play video games. Like, you can do all that on the show floor. But if you really are there to learn about security companies, then in what they do and the problems they solve, you have to have a plan. And that really starts with what you want to learn about. Pick some categories that you want to learn about. Get the map from Black Hat beforehand, ideally, which I do a terrible job of, like, the map, and I'm always like, I got to visit this vendor. We're like, where are they? And there's like a big crowd of people around the map. Print it out beforehand, right? And have a strategy. The show floors for RSA and Black Hat are so large now that you really need to study the map beforehand, because you're going to spend hours just wandering trying to find the right vendor and all that stuff.
Yeah, especially at Black Hat. RSA has its different issues between North and South Hall, but at Black Hat, you've got the main expo hall, and then you have Innovation City. And some of the vendors you may want to go look at
Yep.
are sitting over in Innovation City, and you need to know where Innovation City is and where they are at Innovation City if you're going to go visit those vendors. So understanding the maps of the whole show will help decide, okay, well, when I'm in the main hall, I want to go look at these vendors around these categories.
Yep.
When I go to Innovation City, here's the ones I want to go see over there so I can correlate between those two locations.
And then last year there was like vendors in the hallway at Black Hat.
A couple.
Did you
yeah,
notice
a
that?
few. Yeah, there were a few
I thought that was
in that
weird.
main hallway. Well, I think that's very specific properties of the conference folks, but there were some vendors out there.
Yeah, I thought that was weird. It made it hard to navigate.
Yes. And then you're going to have a ton of vendors not even on the show floor.
Yeah.
So for people who don't understand how aspects of this work, right, is, if you're going to pay for a booth, it's a big investment, right? So you'll have
Huge.
vendors that don't get booths. They'll rent suites, or they'll hang out at the Four Seasons lobby and do meetings in the lobby. So it's always interesting to see, you're going to have a lot of vendors that are there, but don't actually have booths on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to invite you to their suite because it's less expensive for them to bring you into their suite to have a meeting, for example, than to spend the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for those booths.
Yep. Yeah, and there's different levels. Some vendors will rent space on the show floor to have meetings, and that's like, what was that like? It's like $10,000 or whatever. That gets you on the show floor.
Yeah, 10 to 15 is probably your entry point these days.
And a suite is way less expensive than that, depending on what kind of suite you get, but it's still way less expensive. We know we did the research. That's why we have a suite.
I know the numbers.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, Matt's right. If you do have a specific vendor and they're not on the show floor, it probably is in your best interest to reach out to them and say, I'd like a meeting, right? And I think that's going to be far more productive. I think you should also specify, and one thing Adrian and I talk about in our presentation is getting a meeting with the right person, being able to navigate. Because if you haven't worked for a vendor or aren't familiar with the different roles and responsibilities within any software vendor, really, then you might end up meeting with the wrong person, right? Typically, I would say you're probably not going to want to meet with sales. Maybe you do. I mean, maybe if you're a CISO and you're already down the path with someone, you do want to meet, with sales to talk about licensing and structuring and all that stuff. So if that's your goal, then yes, go meet with your, the salespeople that you're dealing with in person, and get some stuff done. I think largely you want to meet with folks like VPs of engineering and product managers if you're technical, right? And you want some technical aspect of what they do. If you're not in like media, I'd say meeting with like the founder is probably, I mean, maybe if you work for a really large company that could be a big deal for that company, you'll get to meet with the founder. But looking at it from you're working for an enterprise, I would say, and Matt, weigh in on this, right? Go for VP of engineering and product management.
Yeah, I mean, the beauty about this event and RSA is you're going to get the executives there, which is great, right? That means VP of engineering, VP of product management, maybe chief product officer.
Yep, that's a good
chief
one.
Technology officer.
Yep.
Right? They're going to be there. The CEOs are probably going to be there. Now, you may or may not want to meet with the CEO of a particular company. You might.
I mean, we
do,
but we're different. We're not not shopping for product. We're trying to learn what they do. And so we do like to meet with the founders. And often we do, and it's awesome.
Yeah, and so you're going to get those types of people there, which is great if you really want to evaluate the product, the capabilities, the roadmap. Where's the product going to go? You're going to have the right people there to get that insight if you can get the meetings with those kind of folks.
Now, smaller vendors, if you're like a senior member of your security team or enterprise security team in any capacity, you may get a meeting with the founder and be like, look, I've looked on your website, checked out some of your stuff. I think it's awesome. I'd like a meeting because we're evaluating this technology and we're really interested in using it to protect our infrastructure, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I think you'll have a lot of founders out there. They're like I said, this is a big event. all those people are going to be there.
In Innovation City, you'll typically find some of the founders at the booth pretty much at all times, is what I found.
Pretty much around the clock. On the bigger booths, it's harder. They're typically going to be in a meeting room, right? Because for the big vendors, and we all know who they are, the executives will be there, but they're going to be in a meeting room somewhere, just constantly meeting with customers. So they're probably not going to be at the booth. So if you go up to Qualis's booth, for example, or Tenable's booth, or Rapid7's, highly unlikely you're going to see the executive team hanging around there. You might catch them because they stop in, but they're not hanging out there like Innovation City, where you're going to see the founders a lot more.
Right. So that's the first step. Have a plan. Meet with the right people. What else, Matt?
Now, all right. So you have a meeting. What do you want to know? Right? You've gone through and you've identified all this stuff up front. What do you want to understand? And the thing I want to understand from a vendor when I talk to them is, the first thing I want to understand is, can they succinctly tell me the problem they're solving? Period.
Yep.
Can they articulate that to you? Because that's my first real test of a vendor, is to say, if you can succinctly and quickly tell me the problem you're solving, and I get it, right? And I understand it, and I've got that problem, I want to learn more. And I think one of the challenges we've seen walking around floors, Paul, over the years, is that sometimes it's not that easy for the people at the booth to really articulate the problem that the vendor is solving.
It's true.
And so that's always my first test.
And then what Adrian and I say really should come next, I think, and Adrian really coached me on this one because I was kind of frustrated, is ask them like flat out, so how is it deployed and how do I use it? Like, before we get into anything else, you've defined the problem. Sure, you're going to tell me how you solve it, but let's talk about, is it an agent? Is it cloud? Is it SaaS? Is it on-premise? Do I need a physical thing in my data center? Do I need a tap? Like, what do I need to get this thing, and how is it deployed? Right. The biggest thing is it an agent? We talked about this on the webcast. A lot of vendors don't like to come out and say that it's an agent because of the negative connotations that it has. I think technology has progressed where, in a lot of cases, it really isn't. But then once you get that piece of the puzzle, when they go on and they start talking about what it does, how it does it, how it solves the problem, you've got the context around, right, I've got an agent, I've got some kind of app or hook into my application, whatever the case may be, I've got a network tap, now I can understand it.
Yeah, and I think that's another one that's really hard for the booth staff to sometimes know.
Yeah.
Right? How is it deployed? Because I need to know whether I need a server to load software on.
Yep.
I need a network tap, because everybody wants a network tap. Whether I need to deploy an agent and give an outbound connection to my cloud service or my internal service, right?
Yep.
And the list goes on and on and on. And in understanding that's important. We didn't get into the nuances in the last segment about how some of these technologies do what they do, right? You take a container security company and they're using a privileged container or a kernel plugin or whatever. That's important information to know.
Yep, absolutely.
You look at ExtraHop. Is it an agent? Is it an appliance? Checkpoint came out with new appliances, right? That's a hardware cost, right? So those details are important as they're talking about how they solve the problem. Because if you understand the deployment approach, then as they're explaining how they solve it, you can decide whether that's going to fit into your environment or not. Because maybe you can't get a network tap. Maybe you can't get a server to run software. Maybe your organization doesn't allow you to have a cloud service, right? These are all important things to know as they're describing the solution, how they're solving that problem, so you know whether it fits in your environment or not.
Absolutely. Also, a key question is how it's priced and packaged. Not so much what it costs, right? Not what the bottom line on my invoice is going to read. That's not what we're asking. We're asking, how do I buy it? Is it per IP? Is it by bandwidth? Is it per application? Is it per user? Can you bundle those up? Is it per server, per instance? Is it subscription? What's is it monthly? Is it yearly? That whole thing. That's important.
Yeah, because you got to think about the budget side
Yeah.
when you get ready to go buy.
It's
Right?
one of the first questions your manager's going to ask you, right? Like, hey, I found this really cool solution, and this is the problem they solve, and we have that problem, and here's how it's deployed, and it fits in our architecture, right? And they do a great job of solving it. The next logical question your manager's going to ask is, how much does it cost? Or at the very least, like, how do we buy it, right? If we've got 1 million users and it's per user, that could be an issue.
Right. Or if it's by endpoint or IP or based on appliances or a combination, right? So think about some solutions that are out there that you buy, I won't name the name, but let's say you buy per IP, but you also have to buy all the scanner appliances. That's an additional cost, right? Are the scanners included or not included? Are the agents included or not included in that bundle? That's important to know because it'll help you start to gauge, how big can this get? Because if it's by endpoint or by asset or something along that lines, and you don't have any other costs associated with the purchase, then it's pretty easy for you to come up with an estimate to say, look, we've got 10,000 endpoints. I know what it. Then you can get a price. But if it's 10,000 endpoints and I need 100 scanner appliances because we're diversified, that's a different calculation from a budget perspective, right? That's why it's important to know those.
I found, Matt, that a lot of newer companies have greatly simplified this formula of how you buy it, right? Because they're trying to compete with the larger vendors that as their software suite grows and from legacy, it's complicated to purchase these larger vendors, right? But you get a newer player in the space and they're like, look, it's by like the amount of logs you do per day. That's it. It's some kind of volume, right? Whether it's network volume, whether it's storage volume, it's some kind of volume, right? And that's how you buy. It's very simple. It's very simple, which is refreshing.
Yeah, it's true, but it's also hard to estimate from a budget perspective. This is the other nuance.
Yeah, it's the other side of that coin, right?
Yeah. So vendors are like, well, it would be great if I could charge you based on throughput and retention period across number of devices or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's how their cost. By the way,
that's how their costs are. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
If you don't understand how this stuff works in the back end, you wouldn't know this. But it's about compute, bandwidth, and storage.
Yeah.
Right? Those are fixed costs in a cloud solution, for example.
Yep.
And if they could charge you based on compute, bandwidth, and storage, they would. Yeah. But for you to calculate how much compute, bandwidth, and storage you would take up, that's really, really hard. So you have to abstract these models in ways that people understand it and something they can equate back to themselves.
And it leads to another great question, whether it can be deployed on premises or in the cloud, right? Which of my options do I have here? I think many vendors have both today, right? It depends on the solution. But in the example you just gave, Matt, if my costs for the cloud solution are going to be really high because maybe I've got a large organization or whatever I'm buying is for a really large bank of servers. I may have a small number of users, like Instagram is the shining example, right? They had like the smallest technology team on the planet that deployed one of the largest technology deployments. And so you may bring that solution on premises because we just have so many servers or instances or applications, right? So you got to kind of play that game as well. But coming back with, I know it can be deployed either on-prem or in cloud or whatever the combination is important.
Yeah, and in understanding that's important to lead into the last piece is understanding the value, right? Is it operational ease, right? Can I get time to value quickly? Yep. What's it going to take to deploy? How many resources do I need? Will this reduce my resource load in managing this solution, right? The other thing we have to really articulate as vendors and what I think our audience needs to understand when they go interview with some of these vendors is to really understand value, because value is a component of buying. If I can prove to you that there is value in how I operate it or the number of resources I can, allow to do other things or automation or whatever, those are buying criteria that allow you to move forward and say, look, this is worth the investment because here's what I'm going to get at the end. And it's that value proposition that has to be well understood. And that's kind of that last component I always want to make sure I understand is, look, I love your deployment model. I love your licensing pricing model, but where's that value for me when I deploy this? What can I gain from deploying your solution? Because if I can't prove that out, it's going to be really hard for me to get budget to go deploy the solution.
Yep. Absolutely. Awesome. What else?
Those are my main ones.
Yeah, we had a guide on that somewhere.
Yeah, I think we have a questionnaire somewhere. It might be up on the website. I can't remember.
It is somewhere.
There
on
might
the
be a
website.
wiki post or something.
Yeah.
There might be a wiki article to it, but it kind of lists you through,
The questions.
how do you, problem, solution, value, how is it deployed, how is it licensed and packaged, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the main ones that I think people have to really get their heads around next week when they walk into Black Hat and they're looking for new solutions.
Yep. I think largely you and I won't have time to walk the show floor at Black Hat.
Unfortunately, I don't think so. We might get a lunch break where we might be able to pop down and say hey to a few people. But yeah, I think we're going to be in the suite pretty much nonstop for 2 days.
Yeah. It's a good thing. Hopefully it's a nice suite. We'll make it nice.
And as long as the air conditioning is working, we'll be fine.
We'll be fine. Awesome. Well, that concludes this segment. Coming up next, Viave Charles Thompson will join us, talk about threat hunting. Stay tuned.